All right, art. Well, I thought I'd put art in because sometimes dentistry is a bit of an art. I like to think it's a science, but really it's a combination of the two. Anyway, it's just an excuse to show my art, which is really poor, I have to say. But then a lot of art is poor. So these are some pictures that I did give a talk to some trainers about 8 years ago. I said it'd be their Christmas treat. But often we get together and the talks weren't that interesting, really. They're basically about how the first year students or first year dentists were getting on in our practice. Anyway, you know, I could use a computer, so I put them on Keynote and did a slideshow. So I won't bore you with the slideshow, but this is going back to when I broke my finger. I did these, and I remember distinctly doing them because I'd seen an artist in where is it? Not Hay on Wye, the Wye Valley, Forest of Dean, yeah, where you have 6 fingers apparently. Anyway, in the Forest of Dean, and what they did was they did a picture, and when it was still wet, they rolled it onto the other one, and that's how you get this kind of image. So that's what I did, and then yeah, later on I took photos and added a moon or a sun or something. But anyway, they're still up on the wall, and they make me chuckle every day I see them. And this was also a copy, but as you can see, it wasn't a great copy. So the one on the left probably is worth about 30 million, and the one on the right, well, worth a bit less. Anyway, and I run out of paint. If only I could have afforded more paint, it would have been Pollux as opposed to Bollocks. But it's up on the wall, and also so I stuck this in. Right, one of the, if you go, yeah, if you go onto that website, you'll see a link to my other website. But we should have a dental health service. So top marks if you thought, well, that looks like an Andy Warhol. Well, it is, but it's well, I did it. And oh right, so this is why I did it, is to remind me of some other art. So you're allowed to take pictures now. And Miro must have gone through a great deal of effort to draw these lines, and also it looks like the ornament that you put in the garden. It Yossi Hughes would say I could do that, and I did. Well, I didn't really, but the reason I put the pictures of Miro in is I remembered I was in Palma, and it's a funny link, but my wife was in the shower, so I thought, oh, she's going to be a while, and I had my iPad, and I come across this thing's called brushes. It's now called Brushes Redox, I think. And I'd started with the idea of thinking I could make an app that would be facing the patient. So all the apps I'd looked at that time were just basically promoting the practice, nothing to do with the patient, the user. And so I thought, well, I'll have to have a logo. And so you can see I kind of had to go at painting the logo and trying in different colours on the iPad. And then when I showed the idea eventually to a proper graphic designer, that's what he came up with, the one that you can see. And of course now with QR codes, well, I made the QR code, so if you scan that'll bring up the Care for Teeth .org website. So it's funny how you learn these things. And so when I was out there, I don't think I was out there, but at some stage I decided that I'd make a picture for my daughter, whose name bizarrely is Rebecca, and I showed the picture to a friend, and when I showed it to her, it did a rather strange thing. It kind of repeated what I'd done, and so I was surprised as she was. I mean, clearly she was really impressed with my art, um, but that's what it was, and it showed what I'd done as quickly as that. So that I thought, well, that's interesting, but I'd never seen it before. I did the picture like 8 months before. I thought, well, that'll come in useful. So you can see what I did here. So it's difficult when we discuss cancer and show horrible pictures. So this is, it's not a horrible picture, and clearly you would have thought, oh, there's something wrong here. But what I did is, so I made it using brushes, and then I put it onto iMovie, and then I definitely reversed it, and you can see it on the app, along with a few others, showing what oral cancer looks like. And yeah, you can see. So it would have been done on my iPad, and the little red button you work out, you press that, and that's how you record. And so you learn these things as you go along. So I did another one. So this has a story behind it, because this is I think it's called the Taj Palace Hotel. I normally couldn't afford this. I definitely couldn't afford it, but I stayed in there for over 3 weeks when I got stuck in India. And yeah, I don't think you're going to be lucky, but you can see what I was having to go at, and clearly, you know, I was using my thumb. That's my excuse, but it's not great. Oh yeah, I don't know, just playing around with the keynote. Right, but yeah, so I'd gone on holiday with friends to India because it was my tennis partner's 60th birthday. I'd already turned 60, and we ended up going to India. So we all went around on a bus for a fortnight. It was brilliant. But one thing and another, I got stuck, and we got stuck because of COVID. And that's a whole different story, because some of this, yeah, the dentists carried on working when we should have finished a lot sooner. And I think it was because if we'd have worked another week, there would have been a huge clawback of money from dentists. And it's typical government interfering with what is health. And, there are different ways you can look at these things, but that was poor. My nurse shouldn't have been near the building because her husband was, as you would say, or was it being shielded? The whole thing was poor. Yeah, and when I was out there, my friend, who's an ENT, a professor of ENT, he'd had a couple of colleagues die, because of COVID. It was a messy time. And when I was out there, you can see the picture at the bottom right. So I've been stuck in my room. Well, stuck in the hotel. There is no way on earth I would say it was a hardship. So I was just lucky. But I'd started playing around making pictures, because people don't like looking at teeth. And, so I was trying to make little designs. And I'm not Steve Jobs, but it was a case of, well, actually that might work, and it might come in useful to making little videos for the app. And yeah, so these are some more pictures. So I actually made these to show how a toothpaste works, so Biomin. So it's a great toothpaste, and again, I'm not going to show you the pictures. I think some of them are within the app, but not by no means all. But if you can I bring my mouse? So this one is something, is that this is what kind of happens if you're sick a lot. You lose the enamel off the tooth, and so for those patients, there's not much you can do really, but I'd scan the tooth and then just added a bit on, and of a hybrid material, because I was using a scanner at the time. But these you can't see them, but they're the reverse. But you get these little holes in teeth, and these dentinal tubules. It's really exciting stuff, dentistry, and yeah. So what the main way to stop sensitivity is to fill in the gaps, and that's what people think. And going back to the in the Biomin, the particles are meant to be the blue ones, which are the Novamin. The green, they must be the Biomin. The green must be the Novamin, which is in Sensodyne, and so that's why Biomin's better. But also it releases, as well as fluoride, it releases potassium and calcium, and they're the bits that are missing out the saliva. And there's also an element which is sticky, which we've used in the dental material, and it works really well. And so you think, well, this has got to work a lot better than the other toothpastes, and it's certainly a lot better than the one you can get on prescription. Why you can't get this on prescription, but you can get the other one when you still need to add another product, is one of those odd mysteries that you try not to think about. So yeah, this was my first mock-up, but you'd be pleased to know that this isn't an original Rothko. It's my Rothko that I made because I couldn't afford it, but that's the base. And then that was this sort of initial idea on what you would do, and it's not far off really of my original idea. And then you just sort of progress and mess about. And these this is something called the BWI. So this is I sent to the graphic designer because a BWI is what the children, obviously we all get wear on our teeth, and you can get abnormal wear. People who are stressed and may grind their teeth. That's one of them. But the other, the real big one now at the moment is you women drinking all that prosecco because you're so happy. So that can dissolve your teeth. So be careful. Don't clean your teeth after you've had your prosecco. But teenagers, it's just terrible, terribly sad when you see them coming in. So I used to do what was called a BWI score, and the BWI is the one on the left. So you can sort of, obviously it's on the app, so it's scored, and the other one, which is the BPE, which is, as you say, directly related to your general health. I did a graphic. I showed the design, but obviously we've got the graphics guy. That's his job, and clearly he's a lot better than me. And so that's what we did. And so interestingly, so I've got an app, and I looked and thought, well, they did an app. So BWI, I think, was done by Sensodyne, because they brought out a toothpaste called Regenerate, which, this is advertising really, is that because we had more aware of the problem with erosion as it is, then, you think the toothpaste will make the tooth magically grow. Well, clearly it doesn't. It's a clever name, but it doesn't do what it says on the tin. And I just tried to download the BWI tool, and you can't download it on the App Store, nor can you download the Corsadil. And I don't know why. I've typed in the name, you have a go, but the Corsadil one, surprisingly enough, is for Corsadil, and it explains the BPE as well. So what you want is something that does both, but they only ever, obviously do for their brand. Oh yeah, well, I thought I was going to show a picture of my app, but no, I didn't do that. So you have to be careful, and I think this I've now removed as one of the. Actually, I think it still is on the app. If you put in my practice, I'm down about 3 times in my virtual practice. But we can play around with imagery. You have to be careful now. Just what is it? Yeah, there's stuff on the internet and the stuff on Facebook, and that shows fantastic work that's done, but a lot of it is touched up. I haven't been to Turkey and had my hair done. I just painted it on. If you went, what's it you go on, these websites you go on? I always get the name wrong. Anyway, if you went on a dating website, I think you get found out. Anyway, bald men look a lot better. And yeah, so I did the QR codes. So this, they've been kicking around a long while, but never been taken off. I only ever used to see them in London, wonder what they were. And of course, since COVID, we all know what they are. And so, and I did send off, QR codes with my app saying to Aldi and Boots and, next, you see, I used to go past people looking mysteriously at the interdental brushes, which is a very small shelf. It's if you go into Sainsbury's, there's a massive aisle full of toothpastes. Really, if you listen, I think it's even said in Simon Sinek's book, that there are now about 70 brands of toothpaste, different types of toothpaste within Colgate, when there used to just be 4. Really, you want a children's toothpaste. The whitening toothpaste, really, they don't work. So the children's toothpaste, yes, you want a lower percentage of the fluoride for the children, and you need to control that. I'm not going into that now. And the ones that we say that work for gums, well, they don't. I think, like one of the toothpastes that used triclosan, they had to remove it because in Germany they think it's carcinogenic. In UK, it's not carcinogenic. I worked that one out. One of them's wrong. And so, so the idea was that I gave this to the medics across the road. I'm not sure if it stayed up long. When you go in, there are masses of posters for looking after your health. But really, any practice should have this on the wall, I would hope, in that it gives you some opportunity to at least look at it, to look at an app, and and the way it should work is, and the way it works in America, there's a product called Beam, and you're able to get discounts on your treatment when you interact with the phone. Oh, so talking of America, I'm going to talk over this, but I went here in 2015, and so as you know, I've made some videos, but I couldn't match this, and I couldn't match their money. Oh, I'll turn off the volume, because it's... So basically, this is what I was really into, is scanning teeth for a variety of reasons, but the main reason I did it was because you could remove less tooth. So you look at, people who have all these crowns done, you remove an awful lot of tooth tissue. So a third of the teeth that are crowned a few years ago, the nerve of the root would die, and it's just because of the amount of tooth you get taken off. Well, now the adhesives are really a lot better, and you can glue white fillings on teeth, as you know. Lots of people are having these cosmetic smiles done where they just glue a composite onto the front of the teeth. This is better in that you can glue a solid piece that's made on a milling machine, and you can do all kinds of fancy stuff. And this was, so I was there, I think I'm at one of the Brit there of the 5,000 who were there, and you can see it's a bit of a big hall. So, this is the stuff that I do, is the scanning. But the scanner I bought now is out of date. The one I bought back in the day, the whole kit cost about 70,000, and now it costs about 20,000, and just twice as, well, 4 times as good, a lot easier to use as well. A bit like when I started with a PC. So Train, they played, if you've heard of Train, and this guy was about to say how much money they'd made. I think at that time, big company Dentsply, and I think it was Sirona, they merged together, and they opened the NASDAQ, which meant it was like a £2 billion company. So they rang the NASDAQ bell. So this is the stuff that I was using, but now it's moved on. You don't have to spray powder all over your teeth, and you can take really good pictures of the teeth. But a lot of things here are, it is about making a living, and it's where you join it. So this was Tony Robbins. He's a real motivator. Everett Smith. He's like David Beckham, but for the American football, the wrong one. And it's a fantastic show. And then they brought this out, and it's got all the bits on it. It was a fantastic bit of kit. It cost a huge amount of money. I don't know, about $180,000 or whatever. And they bought the guy that bought it there and then. He was aged 82, so that says a lot. Anyway, I really like this kind of kit, but I did use it differently. And when we were out there, they had a series of talks from different people, and they developed something, or rather, those that weren't dentists, who were the chemists, I think, they were really pleased with the material they were using, which is I was using back in Bristol, which is a hybrid material, but I couldn't get hold of it. And the reason was, I don't know, I slipped across, is that they'd had problems in the States, and it transpired the problems, caused people to get sued and fail, but they were just using the material incorrectly. So I used to do a lot of crowns using the material on the health service, and they worked fantastically well. And you hung on to a lot more tooth tissue. So this is an excuse to put up a picture that I took there. But if you were a dentist, you'd say, now that is odd, that is different. But that's the way it should be. You should be touching the teeth as little as possible. And so that's what I always tried to do. Oh yeah, and these are the sort of cases. So I did take pictures of them, but I ended up, and I thought, well, this will you have to be interested in what you do. So, and if any dentist's looking at it, they probably think, what's he done there? But some of the things I was able to restore, and I made, like in the middle of that, there's a bridge on a temporary material, and I know my ex-nurse bumped into the patient, so it was a temporary. She didn't want a denture. It was on the health service, and the bridge that I made out of a plastic material on a milling machine is still there. It's been there 10 years. And yeah, so I think with a lots of health things, it's difficult to do good research or even try things out from fear of being sued. That is a big problem. But over the last few years, this became sort of more popular, and it's based on, it's a tooth thing, but it's based on what one person did in Scotland, probably in the middle of nowhere. And it wasn't until, so it's difficult to know if the story's true, but she was doing a technique that most did, but was kind of doing it incorrectly, but it worked. So sometimes, and she's not alone. There was, we have what we call the Dahl effect, which you use for braces in the UK. I don't think they use it in the States, or they don't agree with it in the States, but it does work. So this Dahl effect was based on one case. So whenever you do research, it has to be evidence-based, but two of the major things that we do in dentistry are based on a single person. And as you can see, if you want to look it up, it's more readable if you look it up on Wikipedia, where, as I said before, most doctors look.